Here in this video, we're going to start talking about Chapter 9, the instruments of trade policy. Alright, so in the previous chapters, we discussed a variety of trade models and theories. We learned that, trade in general is a good thing, right? The country involved should be able to benefit from trade as a whole. However, trade does create winners and losers. And of course, for the losers, they could make an argument that they lead the government to come up with some policies so that they could be protected from international competition, okay? And they could say, this is gonna do, is gonna help them, these losers, okay? Either, temporarily or permanently, okay? And so, the country as a whole would be better off, okay? And that's why here in this chapter, we're gonna talk about, what should a country's trade policy be. Okay. Here, when we talk about the trade policy or policy instruments, we specifically mean tariff, import quota, export subsidy, etc. Okay. And of course, these three are the most commonly used by the government and most commonly debated. Okay. Tariff means, the tax imposed on exports and imports of goods, okay? Goods and services, we should say. And import quota is a limit or cap set by the government on the quantity of imported goods, okay? And export subsidy is the subsidy provided by the government to exporters, okay? They could do this in a variety of ways. For example, the government could provide the low cost or even zero cost loans to exporters, or they can, make the direct payment of subsidies, or they can just simply do the tax reliefs. Okay, and so these are the three, again, major trade policy instruments. Okay, of course, the instruments goes beyond or much broader than these three. Okay, especially in these days, we actually use more and more of the long tariff barriers. Okay, but for these kind of things, we're just gonna leave for you guys to read. Okay, I think you can find some interesting discussions in the textbook. Okay, so here, the videos I'm going to make, for this chapter are gonna focus upon the cost and benefits of the trade policies. Okay, we're gonna evaluate the cost and benefits of tariff. Okay, primarily, and for the import quota and export subsidies. You probably noticed that we actually already discussed in previous chapters, right? We talked about the import quota before, remember? We discussed, on the supply and demand graph. It's supposed to be a vertical line, right? And for export subsidies, again, we briefly discussed it before, especially for a specific case, which is agricultural subsidy in the U.S., right? We said that over the period of, 2 or 3 decades, the U.S. government actually spent billions and billions of dollars on the agricultural subsidies, right? All right, so in this chapter, we're gonna, have a more in-depth discussion, okay, focusing primarily on tariff, okay, and quota, import quota and export subsidies. we're gonna leave for you guys to figure it out. Okay, and in terms of the analytical tools or graphical tools, it's very similar. Okay, and we will also talk about the welfare effect. How these trade policies could create winners and losers. Okay. All right. First of all, let's take a quick look at about the U.S. tariff in history. Okay. Today, the fact is about half of the imported goods of all industries in the U.S. are actually duty-free. Okay, duty here means the tax imposed upon the imported goods. Okay, duty-free means we don't have to pay any tariffs at all. Okay, but this was not always the case in U.S. history. Okay, and this chart shows you over time fluctuation of the tariffs. Okay, the U.S. tariffs. This chart is made by the Pew Research Center. Okay, and as you can see in early 19th century. Okay, and the duties as a share of the total value of all imports. So we're talking about this brown one, okay, and dark brown one in early 19th century was actually achieved 57%. Okay, so that's a pretty high share. Okay, and actually, in history, at some points, the tariff revenue is one of the primary revenues for the U.S. government. Okay, and even in early 20th century here, you can see that the duties as a share of the total value of the dutiable imports. That means the imported goods that are subject to the taxes or duties was achieved 59%. Okay, so among that means among the all dutiable imports, 59% were subject to the tariffs. Okay, and of course, after World War II, we see a significant decline in these two shares. Okay, so if we just look at the share in all imports, you find that it decreased a lot, all the way to 1% in 2017. Okay, now this is because of many free trade agreements the U.S. government signed with the rest of the world, and some other factors, of course, like the free trade or the bilateral trade negotiation. Okay. One thing I do want to point out is here, please note that the ending year on this chart is 2017. Okay, so later we're gonna see how this would probably change our discussion. Okay, and now this chart shows the cross-country comparison about the tariffs. Okay, and as you can see, the darker the color of a country means the higher the tariff rate. Okay, and the lighter, of course, means the more like the lower the tariff. And for the U.S. here, we find that on average, it's about 1.6%. Okay, which is ranked among the lowest tariff countries or economies. Okay. Again, this chart is from the Pew Research Center, based upon the data from the World Bank as of March 1st, 2018. Okay. Again, in the previous chart, I pointed out that the ending year is 2017. Here, the data used to make this map is based upon the 2018, so the question we would like to raise here is, what would you expect to happen to the U.S. tariffs in the past few years? Would you expect this number stays almost the same, 1.6%, in other words, extremely low level, okay? Especially, when we compare it with other major economies, okay, developing and developed ones. Or you actually believe, certain things happened in the past few years substantially changed this number. If that's what you believed, which way it changed this tariff rate and made it going up substantially or going down, okay? Now, I would strongly encourage you guys to go ahead and find some real-world data. You can simply Google this, okay? And then bring your data and thoughts to our class, and we're gonna discuss that.